Dr. Mansur, welcome to my show, Leadership and Personal Branding. I love how you first connected with me on LinkedIn. All I did was to share my one of my top three goals, and all of a sudden, someone sent me a message. Here is a book you can read. And since then, I've went on to appear on a global conference, online virtual conference that you hosted. And the second conference, I was the opening speaker. If you follow steps by steps and you're consistent in being intentional about finding out about yourself and sharing that with others, you will see magic. And I'm so grateful to have you on my show today. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. You've written a book, a great book about inner greatness and personal branding. Before we start, how about you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Thank you very much, Felix. As you know, I absolutely enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you. And I love the fact that you chose to read my books. And as you know, I always said greatness is a choice. You had to choose to read those books and then follow the guidelines, because if you didn't choose, nothing would have happened and our relationship would not happen either. And that leads me to my mission. My mission has always been to help people succeed. Everything I've ever done is for that goal. To introduce myself, my father abandoned us when I was in the seventh grade. That created a financial strain for us. But mom taught me to focus on solutions and not on problems. She also taught me to use all my skills to earn money for my tuition and books. So even in the seventh grade, I was able to launch my first small business, making hand-painted greeting cards with a message in rhyme written in calligraphy. This is also when I learned the most important principle in business. In order to sell anything, value must be higher than price. If you are the monopoly supplier of anything, value is very high. The cards I was making were unique, and I was able to sell them at 5 times the price of a typical commercial card. My mom also taught me everything I know about leadership. She emphasized making lots of friends, having a massive network, and sharing knowledge with each other, because the combined knowledge of everyone is far more powerful than any single individual. She also taught us to focus on things within my control and accept things that I could not control. She also taught me to try as many things as possible to find out what I truly enjoyed and what I was good at. Because if you don't try multiple things, you will never know what you're good at. This helped me develop multiple parts of my brain, and this is also what helped me to develop my interdisciplinary perspective. So I got a liberal arts degree in economics and politics, and then joined a doctoral program in political science. And that's when a couple of technology companies gave us free hardware and software, and my journey into information technology, cybersecurity, and all of this began. And for the next 25 years, I was working in healthcare, nuclear energy, biotechnology, education, and transforming organizations through this cybersecurity leadership, but also developing the business through personal branding. I didn't know the personal branding as a word at that time, because what I was trying to do is promote the people within the company and helping them promote the company instead of focusing on ads, because too many people, too many companies focus on ads. I was never doing ads. It was all through people networking, relationships. And as a result, I developed programs later on, when I finished my doctoral degree, I developed programs, academic programs, with the concept that it'll be about cybersecurity leadership, but also personal branding, all within the program. And this program won awards, and my students and graduates won awards. Why did I do it that way? Because people need two things to succeed. And that is contained in what is I call the T personality. And what is that? The stem of the T is the domain knowledge. You must have domain knowledge, something that you need to sell to the market. But then you have to have the head of the T, which is the ability to apply that knowledge to a variety of problems, situations, and business verticals. So, for example, why do I stress personal branding? Why do I stress public speaking? Because that's the head of the T. Domain knowledge alone is not sufficient to be successful. And I've shared everything that I know in two books, Cybersecurity Leadership and Bring Inner Greatness Out, which you have read. So I wanted my work to be enjoyed by people from all over the world, people who may never attend my courses or never know me, but they can get enough from my book so that they can succeed. These days, I spend most of my time public speaking. And one of the most fun things that I did recently was that I was a semifinalist in the World Championship of Public Speaking, hosted by Toastmasters. And next year, I will try to win the championship because that experience was very helpful to me. I also teach and coach people worldwide. And recently, my 15-year-old student just did her first professional presentation. And I'm so proud of her. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mansur. That is such an experience. And to the 15-year-old that did a speaking engagement last week or 2 weeks ago, I watched the video and I saw how she spoke about a dad who is a doctor. And this dad is always not there and always busy. And
Right.
one day he had to take her to school
Right.
and he did not know where to go. So she helped him to get there. But still, when she got sick, it's her dad that helped her to stitch the wound that they were treating. So that was a very powerful story from a 15-year-old
Think of
learning the idea of personal branding and telling stories in a most vulnerable way, putting their parents in the dark mode for a second and then elevating them when they are in need. So that was powerful. I like the concept of the T, and this resonates with me because recently there was a workshop and someone was teaching about the power of personal branding.
Mhm,
And this dentist
mhm,
did not know about personal branding. But when he was told, 1 year after, he started posting and posting and posting. And soon all the audience
mhm.
started coming to his business. So he
Oh,
was posting about skateboarding all the time, something that he loves. So
mhm.
that's kind of the idea, and I like how you explained it with a T as a stem being your core knowledge, and the rest of the things is how you elevate yourself.
Correct. Yes.
One other area that I want people to kind of follow through, you gave your story when you're young, when you started selling cards,
Mhm,
and then you went on to speaking. And then, but you had ignored, I'm sure you ignored it for a long time. You focused on the education. And then later on, when you start going through the self-discovery, these stories are actually what is driving us. And I have a similar story with my red BMX bike. So there's a speech on this.
Yes. Oh,
I
yours
can
is
I
powerful.
can
Yeah.
I can share it later. So that's very good. So um, I know you said you are speaking. So you started from cybersecurity, then you went into speaking and coaching and teaching, and recently you are in a competition and you are expecting to go for another competition next year. So that is the drive. Why do people do it? I want to ask you this question first before the personal branding question. But why do you think that that people should have the drive to keep going for the next thing? What is the main reason behind it? Because most people might not get it. Why do you want to keep going until you win this championship?
Well, the key is that a lot of people forget that success is an iterative process.
Yeah.
Even public speaking, the very first time you do any speech,
Hmm.
it's going to be very raw. This is why Toastmasters is so powerful. And I know that you are a member of Toastmasters. You know that I'm a member of Toastmasters. Well, what is the most powerful thing about Toastmasters? It's the feedback that we get every time we speak. And we're getting this feedback from a variety of perspectives because each person represents a segment of the audience or the population.
Yeah.
As they give me this feedback, I can refine that speech. So,
Hmm.
therefore, similarly, success, until you climb 2 feet, you don't know that you can climb 4 feet. But once you have done 4 feet, you can challenge yourself. Oh, I've done 4 feet. Can I do five? Can I do six? And
Yeah.
see, success builds upon success. Humans need that satisfaction of succeeding because every time you succeed, it actually sets you up for higher levels of success.
Yeah.
Nobody can win the world championship and just like that. I mean, just go and you can't do that. It's an
Yeah.
iterative process of achieving greatness.
I agree. And I have this quote that I've always wanted to share it in a live video. I've just posted about it. Success has no limits.
Yes,
Breakthrough success is the foundation of success. Every time you reach breakthrough success, you don't stop there. You keep going and going. And that's why it's almost like a journey that never ends. I like that. I never knew the meaning of personal branding, but
hmm,
I set a goal without knowing what it meant. And
right.
then I read about it. And then also I never knew about Toastmasters. I never liked to speak in public.
Hmm, hmm,
And so all those things I learned from your book and your Bring Inner Greatness book here. And
hmm.
I've always thought actually the biggest quote that made me kept reading and reading is when you talked about your circumstances
Hmm.
don't define who you are.
Correct.
I forgot the exact line. Can you repeat that quote?
The accidental circumstances of our birth may create unique obstacles, but they never define our destiny.
Yes, that quote. I think is in the very beginning of the book, and that is what sent me back into discovering where I came from all the way to where I am now. And that journey is actually what led me to my first keynote speaking experience. And then after that, I wanted to start a podcast because now I thought I had a story to share. And that's how this started. I niched down to leadership and personal branding.
Mhm.
So before we go too far, I want to ask you our first main question. How do you define your personal brand?
Sure. Personal brand contains several elements. First of all, what do you stand for? People must know what you stand for. Then, your name. Just like a company name is a brand, your name is your brand. So, how do you display your name? If you have a nickname, do you show that sometimes or something else sometimes? You can't do that. You have to display your name the
Yeah,
same way at all times in all forums because that is what is going to grow in value.
yeah,
Then we need to know what are your values. For example, is honesty important to you? Is success important to you? Is friendship important to you? So values kind of shape your behavior.
hmm,
Then you choose symbols because think about Companies have symbols representing their brand. So humans, people must choose symbols that represent the brand. Why should you do that? Because the symbols will suddenly be seen by people, and people will ask you questions about those symbols. As soon as they ask you questions, guess what? You have now started conversations. And
Yeah.
as soon as you have started conversations, what happens? You build relationships, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they learn about you, your mission in life. You help them with their causes. You've tried to find out, are there similarities? So you have to have some causes that you support, and those should be conveyed in your words, actions, and deeds. But the most important thing about a personal brand is that it must be independent of any organization. For example, an organization's brand must not be superior to my brand. It should
Mm-hmm.
always be the other way around. My
Yeah.
brand should be superior to anything I touch. So, what does that mean? That means the value of anything I touch, any organization I support, their value must go up as a result of my association.
Yeah.
If you notice, most people don't even know if I work for any company, and they never did. It was always, oh, Dr. Hasib works, is mentioned this company. Dr. Hasib said this. For example, Toastmasters is not my brand. I help the Toastmasters brand. I create more value in the Toastmasters brand. Notice that you learned about it and the power through me.
Yeah.
By itself, it's nothing, literally. It's the
Mm-hmm.
people that make up the brand.
Yeah. I agree. And that's what actually after that, actually leading to my speech, I went to Toastmasters and I delivered a speech multiple time until the last day I asked you, hey, I'm planning to use a PowerPoint presentation. And your reply was PowerPoints are like crutches, like
Correct.
on a bicycle. Can you
Yes.
explain that logic about PowerPoint like crutches and why we don't need them all the time?
Yes. The most important thing about public speaking is that you have an inner story and an inner voice.
Yeah,
So when you speak, you must speak in a way that nobody else can.
yeah,
When you try to do PowerPoint, what is happening? PowerPoint is becoming the speaker, and the people are going to focus on whatever words or pictures you have in there, and it becomes your crutch, and your inner story will become hidden. Your emotions will become hidden. Instead, if you start doing without any of those crutches or things, then guess what? You are forced to start developing your inner speaking voice. If you noticed, your speech became far more powerful without the PowerPoints. If you
mm-hmm,
notice, even this conversation we're having is without PowerPoints, because if I had PowerPoints, people would focus on that. We would suddenly become tiny, and the whole conversation would become very like sterile. We
mm-hmm.
don't want that. You want emotions.
Yeah, I agree. So actually, that ended up, I agree with that. I last the night before, that's when I threw everything out. And uh, only after the speech, I could tell I would have ruined my personal brand. So, so, and in your book, you talk about uh, one of the steps once you define your personal brand, you create a personal brand symbol. But
Mhm,
before we get into that, you also say you have to protect your brand.
mhm,
And the days leading to the speech, I kept thinking, should I proceed with it? Should I? Because I was still in the process of creating and
mhm,
creating. And I thought, should I send you a message and say, I'm not ready to do this?
mhm,
And I kept pushing myself and just having the courage to show up authentic and deliver the message. And that's where I see most people hesitate even posting anything. They start typing and then
Yeah,
they erase. They start typing and then they erase. And instead of just typing and let it go and see what happens, you can delete it later. So, how can you expand on the idea of protecting somebody's brand, but also allowing people not to feel the hesitation of portraying themselves? Because other people might find it conflicting a bit in terms of, am I ready? Am I not ready? And how do you refresh? Can you chime in on that?
absolutely. The key thing about this is that each person must recognize that they are unique.
Hmm.
There's only one of you, Felix, in the entire world. So
Yeah,
why would you ever suppress that? Society and educational systems actually teach to the average. So in my book, you probably saw that I actually hate the way education is done. My courses were never like that. My programs were never like that. It was always about building that individual uniqueness that each person has. And I call it perfecting the uniqueness. So you probably saw that. There is a quote in the book: you do not need to be perfect. You
you
need to
need to
perfect
perfect your
your
uniqueness.
uniqueness.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
yeah,
where the power is. And
yeah,
so the first time you start sharing your uniqueness, yeah, it might not be perfect, but that's okay. That's who you are at that point in time. But that's going to change as you keep developing. From your bicycle story, you probably saw that the first time you probably tried to ride the bicycle, you probably fell down. Okay, if you don't fall down, chances are you will never learn to ride the bicycle. If you're afraid of falling down, you will never learn to ride beautifully. So that's true with anything.
yeah. I agree. And if I can bring back the bicycle reference,
Hmm.
my bicycle was a used bike, looked beaten, and there was no crutches on it. Like there was no wheels, like there was no support wheels.
Right.
And I fell multiple times until I could ride with confidence. And that's
Yes.
the same idea you're trying to explain. That's
Absolutely.
my second best quote in your book
Uh-huh.
is, you do not need to be perfect. You need to perfect your uniqueness.
Yes.
And that explains, goes hand in hand with also protecting your brand when once you establish it.
Correct.
All right. I think actually these points I'm bringing, they are according to some notes I took before from reading the book. I want
Hmm.
to switch to the personal brand symbol. I know you mentioned it already,
Hmm.
and actually before I go there, maybe I'll save this for the next second. I know you mentioned about value and price, which
Hmm.
is very important that people know the difference between the two.
Hmm.
Like, for example, you are selling your cards when you are young, like
Yeah.
in whichever location.
Yes.
Those cards, if you, I don't know how much value you saw in them, but depending on where you are selling them, you you can elevate. The value stays the same over time, according to your definition, I think.
No,
Oh,
the
you
value
get to say
changes.
what value it is. Yeah.
The value changes depending on you. So
Yes.
think of yourself as the packaging around any product. For
Yeah.
example, one of my books, okay? Does the value of this book always stay the same? No.
Hmm.
What if I had a story about you and I meeting one day at a conference, and then I personalizing it with a little note and signing the book with a date and everything? Does the book now become more valuable to you? Probably
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
See? So, similarly, something that somebody famous or somebody that you like has done for you will automatically have higher value. This is where the relationships come in, because relationships create trust and things like that. So, for businesses, if they can establish trust, that creates higher and higher value. Do you understand
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Got it.
Or you can price accordingly. It's all about the value because they know that if they come to you, you will give them excellent service. And so therefore you can price your product so that you can make a decent margin, not to rip people off, but in order to provide higher quality service, your price also has to be higher. For example, the cards that I was making were hand painted. They had a message in rhyme that I personally wrote. It was written in calligraphy, so beautiful handwriting. You cannot get a card like that anywhere else. I'm a monopoly supplier. So again, the value is higher. It
Yeah.
is personalized to the person who ordered it with the name of the person who it's going to. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all of this packaging creates higher levels of value that you could not get in a commercial card.
I
Therefore,
agree.
I
Yeah.
priced it at 5 times and it sold.
Actually, I have the I have this calligraphy book that
Yes, you have a signed copy of the book. So obviously, it has some sentimental value to you.
yeah, yeah. My wife got it. I have been convincing my wife to start a journey,
Yes.
and 2 years in, for my birthday, she bought it for herself. For my birthday, she actually ordered it, say, Felix, I'm going to start reading. Okay. So I like what you mentioned. And maybe an example is for the public speakers. As they start speaking, they're charging less and less. And
Mhm.
as they become more expert in this, their fees keep increasing. They can deliver the same speech, but in a different way that showcase their expertise.
Absolutely. Exactly. Too many speakers actually sell themselves short. And
Hmm.
similarly, too many conferences do not adequately pay the speaker. So many of the
Yeah,
conferences these days are actually hiring vendor executives who are actually paying to speak. Well, what they're not realizing is that when you hire speakers who are paying to speak, obviously they're not that great quality. So therefore, they don't bring enough business either.
yeah,
In order to really give value to the audience, you must bring qualified speakers who have a brand and who can entertain without being specific to a particular vendor and having that. You must have speakers who are vendor neutral.
yeah. Only
Okay.
one thing, only some of the speakers who are paying to speak, they might be on their journey and they want this public, they want to digitize their presence. And that's that could be one reason why they're trying to appear into these paid speaking engagements.
Yes. So my feeling is that organizations that hire good speakers will actually make more money because these better speakers will sell more tickets.
Yeah,
Every
I
time I
agree.
speak at any conference, I advertise the conference, and that sells lots and lots of tickets.
Yeah. I'm saving you I'm saving your personal brand symbol for last year. I have one last question along the personal branding category here.
Okay.
How much do you think your cards could now be compared to when you started selling it? The value, what is the value of your cards now if you had to paint them again?
I would say there could easily be $10 or something or higher each because commercial cards are nowadays around $5, $6. Any decent commercial card is about $5 or $6. But since my cards would be so unique, they would be at least $10+ minimum. Because again, you wouldn't find a card like that. It would have a personal message, et cetera, all that. So yeah, I guess. But I'm not going back in that business. It was a lot of work. It was great when I was in the seventh grade.
Yeah. One thing throughout the personal branding journey is people find clarity in what they want, what unique representation of themselves they want to portray uh, of themselves or to portray to others. So I think that's one big benefit for it. All right, to the next question here.
Mhm.
What is your personal brand symbol and how do you use it every day in your life?
Sure. My personal brand symbol is actually in this book. So if you notice this is the giant crested swallow. So many people
Mhm,
might look at this picture and say, oh, that's a cactus. But this
mhm,
is not a ordinary cactus. It has this crest. This crest will occur in only 1 out of 200 of these types of cacti.
yeah.
Now, you might say, why did I choose this? Because first of all, when I put it in a cybersecurity leadership book, that immediately started creating questions and curiosity. And it made the book unique. No cybersecurity book would have the picture of a cactus in the front. What does this cactus represent? It represents leadership because that crest will only happen to 1 in 200 of this. To me, that means that cactus has developed something special that no other cacti have. That's leadership. Second thing, in order to survive in the desert, these cacti have very shallow roots. So, in order to survive, they have to intertwine their roots with all the other cacti. That gives them strength. Even in a desert, they will not fall down because all the cacti are supporting each other. To me, that symbolizes teamwork because I've always believed in teamwork. I never tried to do everything myself because I believe if I engage several other brains into the product, that product will be better.
Mhm.
It also shows hard work because each of those each of these branches take 50 to 60 years to grow. So that means hard work, perseverance. These trees are also in a desert where there is so little rainfall. So again, they're not focusing on the problem, which is lack of rainfall. They're focusing on the solution by storing water in their giant stems, and their entire body contains the water. They have thorns to protect themselves from animals, etc., etc. But they also have humility because they're blending in a forest of other trees. So if you are in, say, the forest, you might miss the fact that they have this crest. To me, that's humility. Then they also have integrity in purpose. In other words, they are fulfilling their purpose in society and in life. They will give shelter to the birds, fruits, flowers, all of these things. The other very important thing, continuous improvement. They're growing slowly, but surely every year. And then, of course, finally, the harmonious coexistence, because we are better off if we exist in harmony with every other person, people, or things that come along our way. So all of those symbols together make up my brand. And actually, they define me very well because that's who I am. And notice that because I have that, I'm able to share this story to anybody who asks me about my personal brand.
Yeah, that's very powerful. It's very symbolic for a plant that almost has no leaves and stands by itself somewhere in the wilderness. And if you step on it, it looks like abandoned, but if you step on it, it can poke you. Yeah.
Yes.
And so you mentioned few things: leadership, teamwork, integrity, and strength. Was there another one?
Focus on problem solution, not
Problem
focus on the
solving.
solution, not on the problem.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement, harmonious existence, all of those things. Yes, humility.
Yeah, I like it. I like that story, and you can always tell it in any way. And in leadership, also one thing I see that also plays in this personal brand symbol is leadership is, like you mentioned, is about teamwork. But
Hmm.
sometimes there is uncomfortable moments
Hmm.
where you have to lead the team, even in the most uncomfortable situation, in a
Yeah,
crisis.
crisis. Yeah.
In a
Hmm.
crisis, you have to lead. So Cacti is always living in a crisis
Yes.
and is continuing to improve, even though it takes 50 years to grow a branch.
Hmm.
That's one branch of leadership. So I think it's a very powerful symbol. And for me, that's how I also, when I was writing my first speech, my first public speech, I kept thinking and thinking about what should mine be? What should mine be? And I had this Rubik's Cube laying around the house. And every time I will lose it. And when I'm studying or practicing or writing about what I should write for my speech, my kids kept finding it under the couch, inside the toy basket, and they kept bringing it to me. And I just never connected the dots fully. And when I look at my journey from Kenya to Ghana to USA and meeting all these diverse cultures,
Hmm.
and understanding them. And all these colors in the Rubik's Cube ended up showing how we should embrace diversity to become stronger together and who we are, even in the midst of obstacles. So something can seem complex, but one thing that most people don't know is there is simplicity in complexity. And
Yes.
that's one big area I learned from. Every day I'm faced with a situation, I think about the different step by step we can take to make a complex issue much simpler. So, and that was a motivation from this book, and also the reason why for I actually think if I ask people, what is your personal brand symbol?
Hmm.
Just one question, they can define basically a full chapter. You just defined your personal brand symbol, leadership, what it means, strength, continuous improvement, teamwork, and all those. When people think about one symbol, it opens up a lot of self-discovery journey that they have never thought before. And so
Yes.
that's why I actually asked that question in this show for most people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Without self-discovery, you can never have a personal brand. See, too many people are listening to people who don't understand what a personal brand truly is, and they're randomly sharing things without actually knowing what
Yeah,
their personal brand is. They have not gone through the exercise of self discovery, which I make you go through in my book. And so when they fail to do that foundational step, you will see that they are probably destroying their personal brand long before they even build it. They're often
yeah,
going to topics that they shouldn't go into. So, one of the things that I talk about is staying in your own lane,
yeah,
right? If it is not your expertise, do not go into that lane. If it is not your passion, try not to go into that lane, because if you do, you will start to dilute and destroy your personal brand.
yeah. Dilution. So I also read I actually listened to it, the cybersecurity leadership book.
Mhm.
And the reason I read it is because of the leadership aspect. And I
Mhm.
wanted to understand what that means. And I also knew already that actually from my company, there's a lot of focus on cybersecurity. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to be ready to understand the concepts around cybersecurity and how the leadership aspect plays.
Mhm.
And you listed the key, one second here, the key functions of a CIO. I can remind you, there
Mhm.
is seven key functions of a CIO, and this
Mhm.
is because I'm only bringing this up because it's part of leadership, and you can transfer this
Mhm.
anywhere.
Yes.
And one of them is strategic planning.
Mhm.
Second one is building and maintaining relationships.
Mhm.
The third one is cyber security.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one is reliability and quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then five is projects and services. Six is promoting the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Seven is team building. So all those, you can remove the word CIO, and any good leader will actually focus on those areas. So that was my reason for reading the book, the cybersecurity, when I tied it to my goal. And uh, actually, one of my goals was leading with influence and building my authentic personal brand. That was one of them. And if I wanted to lead with influence, it's
Mm-hmm.
important to understand those seven functions. Any,
Yes.
yeah,
So the key thing is that when I saw your post, that's why I recommended both books, because this book was not written for cybersecurity professionals. It was written so that anybody would understand. You didn't need to be a cybersecurity person to understand. And given that we are in the modern era
yeah,
where every organization and every human is a digital organization and a digital human, everything in that book is relevant to what they do today. And that's why I wrote the book.
yeah. Very, very powerful. Even if anyone is not in cybersecurity, there's value in understanding that aspect of leadership.
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of leadership and personal branding, I know uh, it's important for everyone to actually realize the power of a personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
But one aspect I want you to kind of touch on a bit is, why is it even important for leaders to have
Mm-hmm.
a personal brand?
Well, for leaders, first of all, a personal brand will increase the value of your work. I'm assuming people want to earn a decent living. They want to earn the value of their work. Well, if they don't have a personal brand, their value is going to be determined by other people. Having a personal brand allows you more control and more power of determining the value of your work. And that's number one. Number two, it will help you to market your ideas better, because a stronger personal brand will also help market ideas
Yeah,
better. It will give you more confidence and job security. Why? Because you will create multiple sources of income. You will gain better control of your career. So if you have multiple sources of income, guess what? A single organization cannot hold you hostage to the job or the income. I have never had a single source of income since seventh grade. So no company could ever threaten my livelihood. Very important, because there were certain things about me. For example, I was not willing to do unethical things or illegal things. Okay. It's just very simple. So what would happen if I was given an illegal or unethical task to do by my boss and I refused to do it? I could be fired, right? So I need to make sure that I have multiple sources of income. So this is another thing that you can create. And then, because your success is decoupled from the organization, many people, once they're laid off, they lose their identity. See, I've been laid off 3 times, but I never lost my identity. My name, my brand, value never changed. Actually, as I kept growing, my value kept increasing regardless of who I was affiliated with. And every time I affiliated with a business, guess what? Their business exploded. For example, I was at a university for roughly 3.5 years. I inherited a $30 million program. I grew it to $117 million programs in roughly 3.5 years. Then I was laid off. And guess what happened to the program? It is literally dying. So these are the things that a personal brand gives you. The personal brand is the magnet. People are drawn to people. People connect with people. They do not connect emotionally to organizations.
Yeah, I agree. And I remember reading this. I think you mentioned about how you refused a very big offer in your book. You mentioned how you refused because it was unethical.
Correct.
So, so in short, basically, is leaders with an established personal brand know when or what to get involved in and to say yes to and to say no to. Without a strong personal brand, you might be accepting many things that actually might end up ruining your career or your life. Basically,
Absolutely. Happens to people all the time. Yeah.
yeah. That's why I think that's part of why you say once you establish your personal brand, protect your personal brand.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Because
it's all, yeah, go ahead.
no, that's the value. That's your value. And your value should always keep rising, not diminishing.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you actually say protect your personal brand in one book. And then in a second book, you show how you refuse to take this offer, which
Mhm.
could have ruined your personal brand. I thought
Yep.
connecting those two was important for any reader that will be looking for that.
Mhm.
How about, do you have any message for cybersecurity professionals? I know you have a definition of cybersecurity,
Mhm.
and I'll let you say it yourself, but do you have any? Because there's some of the cybersecurity professionals who are just cybersecurity, but they're not exploring part of their personal brand and expand it. So go ahead and share something with them.
I would say two things. I think probably 80 to 90% of the current practitioners of cybersecurity do not know what cybersecurity is. And they need to learn that cybersecurity has three aspects. The first aspect is people, second aspect is policy, and then the third aspect is technology. Yet, you will see the vast majority of cybersecurity professionals focus on the technology. If you ask them, what is cybersecurity? They'll tell you, oh, it's protection of the data. No, cybersecurity isn't about protection of anything because we cannot protect the data. The data has to be protected by the people who use it. We professionals can only set up the environment. And so therefore, training the people, empowering the people, it becomes very important. Then, what about continuous improvement? Who's going to select the technology? If you just focus on the technology and you don't focus on the people, and you have the wrong people or lower paid people or unqualified people, guess what? Unqualified people are going to choose the wrong technology. They're going to configure it wrong. They're going to not train people. They're not going to patch the technology. So, without people and without leadership, and as soon as you do people, you have to have leadership because without leadership, things are going to go helter skelter. Leaders help you focus properly and use everybody's talents properly. So, this is why in this book, I showed the definition of what is cybersecurity very early on. And that is why I stress on the leadership. Now, let's talk about the personal branding aspects. So, you understand leadership, you understand cybersecurity, but then how do you determine your value without a personal brand? And that is why the two go together. And that is why when I built the Master of Science program that I built, the doctoral programs that I built, they all have the personal branding elements. For example, in my classes, in my programs, people learned to define their personal brand, just like you did through the book. But I made that happen through the program itself. So they would start the program understanding these elements. As they go through the program, they would build their brands, and then by the time they graduate, they already had job offers in their hands. They would also learn to network
Yeah.
and let people know about themselves. So you have already seen some of my graduates like Tomiko and Katia and all these people that have become famous in the field. Well, How did they do that? Because they went through the program that was combined with cybersecurity, leadership, and personal branding. You see? So that's
Yeah.
what I would say. I would say use all of these things because this is what is going to help you advance in your career. It is also going to help you bring more value to organizations. So, for example, too many people are in that technology tech job. Tech jobs don't make as much money as the leaders in the field. So if you start learning the leadership in the field, guess what? You're going to make strategy. You're going to be paid a lot more
Not price, but value.
value. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I just wanted to, because I have some friends who are in cybersecurity and friends who are active in cybersecurity, and I wanted them to hear that part and they can connect with you uh, afterwards. So we've,
Yes, there are 300 videos on my YouTube channel. So that's another thing. There are
mhm,
videos on explaining what is cybersecurity. They should go through these videos. A
yeah,
ton of my work is out there for free.
yeah. So we've gone through the defining the personal brand and then identifying a personal brand symbol and how those connect to who you are. The next point of this interview, I want to ask you to tell people how to find you and things like that. But before we get there, usually I don't ask my guests to ask me a question, but do you have a question for me?
I think the main question that I would have for you, are you
Yeah,
having fun? Because isn't this journey of personal
yeah,
branding and growing, I mean, it should be fun. Is it fun for you, Felix? I hope it is because that's
yeah,
what I want my work to help people discover. That it is fun to grow and to do
yeah.
this. So tell me about your fun.
I think for me is the discovery process is so much is very adventurous, and I like like one thing I like is the curiosity that I have in finding my own uniqueness and using it to help others chart their own paths. And so that's why I post inspiring posts every day to get people to inspire people into action so that they can take control of their life. And I hope many of them reading my posts or following through with my speeches, they will find something and one day they will come back to me and say how it changed their lives. And at that time, I will be very happy. So for now, I'm happy, I'm having fun, and I'm waiting for that day when I know that my work has benefited somebody to create an impactful life in them. So that's why I like it. And actually, I enjoy telling people about my journey
Mhm.
with the hope that it will inspire them. So
It will, because
thanks for
each
asking that
person,
question. Yeah,
yeah, each person has this sphere of influence. See, you
yeah,
have your unique sphere of influence. I call it the ripple effect. You see,
yeah,
what is happening with my work is that as it impacts you, you create your own ripple effect, which affects other people. So, this is the beauty of life and growth that we each create ripples. And I'm sure everybody that you touch will create ripples of their own.
yeah. I agree. And it's actually interesting. Part of the fun part is reading a book and then appearing on the authors' uh, conferences
Mhm.
and then inviting them to my own show. So that is like a full circle. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you about the conferences I mentioned earlier. Uh, I know you do them every year. Sometimes you do twice a year, and you look for specific people to do these conferences. And during the preparation, also, you let them create their own content and present in their own authentic way, whichever way they want to show it. And my question is, why do you think it's important for you to host these events so that these people can showcase their uniqueness.
Absolutely. One of the things that I believe every leader has a responsibility to become champions of the leaders that they are creating.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, the only people who are ever allowed to speak at my conferences are people who are followers of my work. In other words, they're practitioners of my work. They've read the books, they've practiced it, and I can see that they're practicing it. And when I do that, it is my job and responsibility to help their brands grow. So this is what is called sponsorship or championing. And I also talk about that in my book called the concept called cross brand promotion. For
Yeah.
example, right now, the fact that you are hosting me is also a form of cross brand promotion
Yeah.
because this conversation is going to go to people from my sphere as well as people from your sphere. And that is the most powerful form of advertisement and promotion. So
Yeah.
that is why it is important. As I do that, it challenges them to think about speeches without slides, without PowerPoint, to think about a story in their own life that they want to share that covers an aspect of the book or whatever they want to share.
Yeah.
And I also make myself available to them to help them if they've developed a draft speech and they're welcome to share it with me and all that. So, in some ways, that is free coaching that I provide, which I believe is some form of mentorship. So, this helps everybody grow, but it also helps me because as people are using my work and I showcase them, well, that also promotes my brand. This is the beauty of cross brand promotion. It helps
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
I
powerful.
know. I know you talk about cross branding a lot, and actually everybody networking on LinkedIn post and commenting, everyone is there for cross branding opportunity. Even for anyone that comments on anybody's post,
Mhm.
they have the idea of what is in it for me and for them,
Yes,
and how
yes,
can they network. So I like that concept. And I know you mentioned cross branding a lot, and one thing that I think the conferences do is, apart from everything else you mentioned, is actually new people from that conference. I network with people from that conference,
yes.
and one of them has actually appeared in this show, and it's very good way to get out there and connect. And I know in one of your book you mentioned simply showing up will lead to chance meetings, and that's now my third favorite quote in the book. Simply showing up will
Yes.
lead to chance meetings. If anybody asks me now, hey, do you want to appear in a conference?
Yeah.
I just check my calendar, and if it's open, I say yes. So
Absolutely.
it's easy. It's easy, yes or no question.
Yeah.
So I know this has been a very good discussion, and I want you to take this time to connect with the audience, tell them how they can find you, and how they can get a hold of your book. And if you have any, and after that, if you have any last minute inspirational speech for them, or anything you want them to do to change the behavior in them, to, let's say, to take action today, what will that be? So how can they find you? How can they connect with you?
Two ways that are very important. One is through my website, which is listed there.
Mm-hmm.
And then my YouTube channel, which has, as I mentioned, over 300 videos.
Yeah.
A simple Google search on my name will bring up a lot of articles and things like that. And of course, they can connect with me on LinkedIn and various other places, which at this point, I'm not sure where the other good social media platforms will be. So we're
Yeah.
always discovering new platforms because even LinkedIn, the algorithm is kind of not promoting our posts as much. I don't like platforms that have algorithms. Platforms should not have algorithms, and that's a big problem for me because nowadays my posts hardly get any views, whereas in the past, when there was no algorithm, just the organic promotion and cross branding used to get me lots and lots of views. Now if a post gets 100 views, it's amazing. So that is a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That's
sure you've
that's
seen some.
very that's very true. I think they are throttling
Yeah,
the views, and maybe they are trying to create a demand out there, and very soon people will start paying. People will have to pay for these things.
right.
So
And I think that would be a big failure because other platforms
yeah.
that I've tried that have not really succeeded.
Hmm.
So we'll see what happens. And so those are the best ways to connect with me. And on my website, there's a page where people can go to find out all the links
Hmm.
to the various formats of my books because the books are in ebook format, audiobook format, video book format. So people can get them in any format that they want. And that's what I would recommend. I'll also have them in the library. So if people cannot afford to buy my books, they should just go to a local library and ask for the book and see if the book is there. I
Yeah.
know almost 90 libraries in Maryland, for example, have my books.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I've seen them in various other countries also. I know people in China, United Kingdom, various countries have told me that that's how they got to read
The
my
book.
books from
Yeah.
libraries, right?
Yeah.
So again, there is no excuse for not reading. I
Yeah.
think that people should develop a reading habit, even if they read less.
Yeah.
Audiobooks are very helpful when you're on the road, you're on a flight, you got all this idle time. Use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I agree. I never liked to read, but when I started reading or listening to audio, I found it very valuable. There's lots of things that we don't know yet. And
Particularly if they're read by the author.
yeah,
See,
yeah.
my audiobooks are read by me.
Hmm. There's one important thing I forgot to
Uh-huh.
ask you, but I think is a message to anybody that might want to invite you to speak. And so
Ah,
I want you to cover. I know you also speak, and I know you coach and all those things. I think everything we've discussed so far is basically free coaching to others. But can you say more on your speaking engagement, what you speak on, and what people should know about your speaking engagements and how they can book you to speak?
yes. It's also on my website. There is a page on my website where people can fill out a contact form. They can tell me what is the kind of conference, then I will talk to them. I can tailor the speech to the audience. I definitely like to include humor in my speeches. So if you've seen some of my speeches, even though I have a message like focus on the problem, focus on the solution, not the problem, I also share that with using funny stories and things like that. Or when I talk about teamwork, again, I share funny stories. And I think it's important for people to be entertained. I see public speaking as a form of entertainment
Hmm.
because if the people are not enjoying it, they're not going to learn much from it and they're going to remember the stories. So I would say just reach out whichever way. And I do personalized public speaking coaching also. For example, this 15-year-old, actually, her mom hired me to coach her, and she's gone through two of my courses so far. They're all individualized to each person. So people might read from books or courses. My courses aren't like that. My courses are individualized to what that person wants to achieve and then help them achieve. For example, my 15-year-old student's goal was to speak at this Ignite Howard 2024. Well, she achieved that goal. I helped
Yeah.
her prepare the proposal so that it would get accepted, because I have experience in getting proposals accepted. And then I
Yeah.
helped her coach with the speech, that it has a message, et cetera, et cetera. So I can do all of that. I do executive speech preparation. I help executives with all of that. In terms of topics, oh my God, there's a wide range of topics. I've spoken at poetry conferences to leadership conferences. I'm one of the few that has spoken at 7 or 8 women's leadership conferences,
Hmm.
mainly because I learned leadership from my mother. So I talk about how I learned that. And even motherhood is actually a leadership job. People don't think about it that way, but it is.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I see, yeah, leadership job, like you mentioned, motherhood. I know some people who have taken time off their career to raise their baby.
Mhm.
Now I see them listing it in their resumes as like, no, they don't even say career break. They say specifically what that job is, like you said, motherhood. So I think that's a powerful way to
Yeah.
start them for people to feel empowered to put that as a full-time job. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I noticed, I went through your website and I noticed the way you write it. You say it's almost like depending on what your interest is, you will actually train them through a real life example. You almost like give them a course, go out there and do this and then come back. That's the aspect, like that's the uh,
That's
big
what
take
is
up. Yeah,
unique about my
yeah.
coaching. Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I picked up from each of them. Like you list the leadership, all those things, and you say how you actually send them off to do a course and then they come back and like that Ignite Award was one example of an outcome. So yeah, thank you very much for continuing to do what you're doing, expanding the meaning of leadership, personal branding, cybersecurity, empowering people through your conferences, books, and coaching programs and speaking engagements. And one thing that has always amazed me is how you are always excited about these speeches. This when when you give these speeches, I know you have so much fire in you. You want to do well, you want to present, and you want people to get the message, and you want feedback. And I know because you always want this feedback, I will also tell you, even though you don't ask me, I will message you and say this. And from that, I also get inspiration. If Dr. Mansur is already worked for 20 something years or 30 something years, and he still gets excited about speeches, then anybody starting and anybody that you are coaching should actually see that as a big motivation. So I think that's one of the hidden things that maybe the people you are coaching or your students, they might be seeing that, and that might actually be motivating them to keep going.
Right. What motivates them
Yeah,
is that they start to discover their inner greatness. You see,
yeah,
that's why the book is called Bring Inner Greatness Out.
yeah,
Most people are suppressing that.
yeah,
See? And that is what I'm helping flourish. And guess what? They
yeah,
then go wild because all of a sudden they discover their uniqueness, what makes them, and they start embracing themselves. They start feeling happy about that, and they start sharing that with the world. And they can
yeah,
see the results also, that the world also starts embracing their uniqueness.
yeah,
You see, society and education has taught them completely different things. They want you to blend in. Blending in has no value.
yeah,
Average has no value. You
yeah,
must stand out. And the only way you can stand out is by perfecting your uniqueness. The
yes,
gifts that you already have inside, polish it, bring it out.
yeah. That's very powerful. And you mentioned about standing out, and maybe this can be one of our last comments here. Is one thing I noticed is that there is credibility in visibility. when you are working on something and it's invisible, even if you are the expert in this area, nothing. You're not credible to anyone. But when there is a chance for you, for a moment of visibility and consistently visible, your work is showing, what you are doing is showing, what you are helping others is showing, credibility starts to rise. And it takes time, but that is part of the process. So most people, my message is most people end up performing for 10 years. And only after 10 years, they start feeling invisible, feeling stuck, and they feel like they are invisible in everything they do. And that's the reality check. But all that time, they were doing great job, but nothing was visible. Nothing was credible. So credibility, so that's why I say credibility. There is credibility in visibility. And uh, I'll let you say your last words, and then I will say bye to my audience and thank you very much for appearing to my show.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure talking with you. I think we covered a lot of things and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed myself. So thank you very much for having me. All the best to you. Take care, Felix.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mansur. Have a good day.